Hello, Rabbi,
Morning, Joe.
and happy Halloween to you.
Why, thank you.
Now, I wonder what made me suggest that we have that topic. Um, but I'm a big fan of Halloween. I've always enjoyed Halloween. My daughter has caught that from me. We do all sorts of costumes and decorations and give away good candy whenever we can. I love the movies about Halloween. This Halloween, we're still reeling from the incident at the movie set where an assistant director was killed by a prop firearm, prop being in quote unquote. And you had some thoughts about talk about banning prop firearms on sets.
No, not prop firearms, banning live, real.
But the gun was supposed to be a prop. It was supposed to be loaded with blanks. Are you
You know,
saying that?
it was on fire when I sat down. I don't know how that happened.
But this is another example of the difference between banning and regulating and controlling. Is that right?
That's exactly right. There are times and settings when certain things are inappropriate or dangerous to other individuals. And I don't remember another shooting death on a movie set. Now, I didn't Google it, maybe it happened, but I don't remember it. And throughout this, no one quoted that it happened and how many times it happened. And as
Well, it's happened quite a bit, and in fact, the last big news event was Brendan Lee, who was the son of Bruce Lee, and he was standing in front of a bunch of gangsters, and they were supposed to fire prop weapons at him, shooting blanks, and one of them misfired and caused the wadding or something to kill him.
And that can happen with a blank because it's something still coming out. And
Right.
So now we have two cases. Well, every day in the United States, 106 people are killed by a gun. Every day. And it's kind of ridiculous that we're focusing on something that's easily correctable. And that has to do with the team that's working. It has to do with the responsibility of the movie people to hire competent people, and also it's responsibility of the actors to treat every gun as loaded, and you don't point a gun at someone unless you're going to kill them.
Well,
And
there was another actor who actually killed himself because he was handed the gun and told it was filled with blanks. So I said, and so he pointed the gun at his temple and said, "Oh, so this will be okay." And he pulled the trigger, and he was dead instantly.
and that just points out what I'm saying. Doesn't matter what someone tells you, doesn't matter with a gun. Every gun is treated as if it's loaded, and you don't point unless you're intending to kill. So that becomes the mantra. And if your actors can't do that, then you shouldn't be handing them anything that can fire, any more than you should hand me welding tools. I don't know anything about welding. So why would you let me use torches? I'm going to cause an accident. I'm going to hurt somebody. So there's a number of people involved in this, Joe. But it's unique in that it was a movie set.
Well, guns have been in movies forever.
And that's why I said, how many other accidents can you recall? You can't, because most of the time, in fact, up until a couple, competent people were hired, they paid attention, and the actors paid attention. And that's why this really becomes a unique event, because of the people involved, not because of a gun.
Well, I like you, I did not Google this, but I can think of all sorts of situations. The famous James Cagney movie where the two actors are crouched against the side of a building, and you hear the sound of a machine gun and bullet holes appear over their heads. That was actually live rounds fired from a real machine gun by an off-duty FBI agent who was paid because of his marksmanship ability. But they used to do live fire in the old movies.
Correct. And how many people died?
I don't even want to think about it.
None, because had they died, we'd be reading about it now. This is brought into focus gun deaths in the movies. So that's the focus. And yet we don't see a lot of stuff. So the idea of banning guns or using this as an example outside movie sets doesn't apply. This is unique to the movie set, but it's a really good example of the lack of training of the actors as well as the individuals involved with the props.
But the problem is there were at least two levels of people in charge of, in this case, and supposedly in every case, of the prop guns to make sure that this doesn't happen. And after the Brandon Lee accident, where he was killed, they issued more mandates, more regulations, more safety measures, and it still happens. So are you saying, you keep saying that if we have enough training, it won't happen anymore. But it seems like no matter how much training we have, these people still find a way to shoot one another, even when they don't intend to.
Well, you're right. It's going to happen. And I think then we're going to have to shrug our shoulders and look at the movie industry and say, well, can we do something with computer graphics? Can we do something so that we don't have to use a gun that can fire live rounds at all? Are there other alternatives? I've watched a lot of war movies, a lot of sci-fi, and I'd swear they're real guns, and they're not. It's all computer generated.
Okay, but to go to your point, we can't have CGI effects on police officers. And I have a feeling that certain criminals would enjoy the idea of having computer generated firearms, but they're probably not going to do that if they're robbing somebody. So regulation seems not, and control and training still seems not to be an effective solution. It still seems like banning, which is the word you use, is the only answer to keeping people from being shot.
I don't think so. I think as long as we're going to have knives, people are going to stab other people. As long as we're going to have can openers or chainsaws, people are going to massacre people with chainsaws. So we're not going to be able to eliminate or ban people get killed in automobile accidents. What we need to do is step back and say, what would a reasonably prudent example be? What could we do to mitigate or slow down? How do we deal with the dangers in our own society? Police officers should be armed. It makes perfect sense to me. And I think we should allow certain citizens to carry concealed. I think licensing, just like licensing a car. And if we want to change the Constitution, change the Constitution. But it's in the Constitution. So now that it stands, it's the responsibility of society to mitigate, to not eliminate, because nothing can ever be eliminated. Somebody will figure out a way to kill somebody with a toothpick. We're not going to ban toothpicks. So it's silly to look at the object, but rather we want to look at the setting, where it's involved. We should not carry guns in a bar. Getting drunk and being armed usually leads to something not desirable, bad outcome. So it's perfectly reasonable to say we're not going to allow concealed weapons in certain settings because of the potential of something happening. And we're going to try to expand that. And you're going to say, well, it could be this, it could be that. No, that's going back to the all or nothing argument. Let's be reasonable and see where it's going to affect, where it's going to happen.
Well, to use another movie example, John Wick kills 3 people with a pencil.
Right.
It's one of the famous traits of his, but that requires special training, whereas a gun does not require special training to pick up, pull the trigger, and point it in the wrong direction and somebody dies. So,
but we do ask people and train people. You put locks on the guns, you lock the gun up. Now, if someone leaves their gun on the table and their 5-year-old picks it up, banning guns isn't going to stop that kind of behavior. And one of the functions may be in schools to teach gun safety, to teach firearms. and to work on both adults and children.
But if someone is trained to do it, that doesn't mean that necessarily they will. And in fact, there were two levels of jobs on the movie set to make sure the gun was safe. They did a bad job and it wasn't, and somebody died. So do we need a third level of regulation? Do we need regulators coming into your home for spot checks to make sure you're doing a good job of being safe?
I think we can look at the Metro here in DC as a wonderful example. The 7000 series trains have an axle alignment problem, and the safety inspectors at Metro were inspecting. And finally, an accident happened, and the National Safety Transportation Board came in, and they came in because their job is, after an accident, what happened? Their job isn't to go in before and start going into people's homes and examining. They came in and said, your safety people are not competent. They haven't been fulfilling your own regulations. And we want you to tighten up and the people involved said, oh my God, look at what happened.
Well, we shouldn't make light of it, but still, it seems that no amount of training can forego stupidity. And as we know, there are still stupid people out there. And I don't see, with all the attempts at regulation, having to pass an IQ test to buy a gun is something that's going to happen. At least in the foreseeable future.
No, I think you're right, Joe. And as a society, we need to look at how many people get shot and killed and what's being used, and then make a decision. What is our acceptable level? Look, I'll give you another example. That young woman who was abused by her fiance, and then murdered by her fiance. I forgot her name already. But given that, look at all the publicity that went into that one young white woman who had a TikTok account, when 40 women of color every day are abused by their partner. And we don't do anything about that. But here it was, we had one incident and everyone's yelling and screaming. It's on TV, they want an investigation. Let's stop that and take a look at domestic violence. And we're not touching.
So the solution is find a way to stop people from wanting to kill one another, then make it harder for them to not kill one another accidentally.
And then we have to take a look at what our tolerance is as a society. We seem to tolerate abuse of women of color, but we don't tolerate abuse of a young white girl that had a TikTok account. That's just what's happened. We're watching it. So we have to step back and look at our tolerance for lots of different things. And gun violence is just another incident. What's our tolerance as a society? And a lot depends on who gets shot. A Hollywood actor shoots somebody and we're yelling and screaming. Yet 106 people are shot and killed every day. And there's no cry. There's no cry.
I hope you have a nice Halloween, Rabbi. Certainly give me enough to be scared of. Will I go to sleep tonight? I don't know. But you have to come over for some full-size candy bars. But as you pointed out, don't take the Metro because it's not safe anymore.
That's correct. And don't inhale because it's not safe to breathe the air. So happy Halloween, Joe.